Welcome to this explainer. Right, let's just dive straight in. Today, we're taking a really close look at the core message of Barack Obama's famous back-to-school address. We're going to unpack this speech and really dig into its themes of personal responsibility and, honestly, the true underlying purpose of education. This isn't just your standard stay-in-school messaging. It actually breaks down exactly why your daily, everyday habits in the classroom end up impacting the entire world.
Okay, so setting the scene here, the speech actually kicks off with a pretty vulnerable story from Obama's own childhood. Instead of, coming right out of the gate with some grand political rhetoric, he anchors the whole thing to a grueling reality that literally zero kids are a fan of, a 4:30 a.m. wake-up call. When he was living in Indonesia as a kid, his single mom just couldn't afford to send him to the school where all the American kids went. But completely determined that he wouldn't fall behind, she decided to teach him those extra lessons herself. And because she worked a full-time job, the absolute only time she could do it was way before the sun came up.
Now, as you can probably imagine, a young kid is definitely not going to be thrilled about dragging himself out of bed at 4:30 in the morning. When he'd push back and complain, his mother would just deliver this incredible dose of tough love. She'd tell him, "This is no picnic for me either, Buster." It's a great line, right? But it also sets up this recurring theme for the rest of the address. It establishes that education is really a mutual effort. It requires real sacrifice from both the adults guiding the students and, crucially, the students themselves.
So that brings us to Pillar 1, the power of second chances.
Obama establishes pretty early on that he wasn't exactly born a perfect student. Not at all. He shares that he was fatherless at 2 years old, raised by a single working mom who's really struggling just to pay the bills. He talks openly about feeling lonely, lacking focus, making some bad choices, and getting into trouble. He states plainly that his life could have very easily taken a massive turn for the worst.
He contrasts this early hardship with the opportunities that he, and actually his wife Michelle too, who grew up in a very similar working-class environment, eventually managed to seize through sheer hard work. Now, the speech absolutely acknowledges that many students today are facing tremendous hurdles. Maybe it's a lack of support of adults, serious financial anxiety, unsafe neighborhoods, or just negative peer pressure. But the core argument being made here is absolutely crucial. Initial disadvantages do not dictate your future. Where you start simply does not determine where you end up.
Moving right along to Pillar 2, writing your own destiny. So from that place of empathy, the speech really pivots to a hard message of accountability. It argues that no matter what your circumstances are, no matter your background or how much money your family has, there is simply zero excuse for neglecting homework, having a bad attitude, or dropping out of school altogether. The message is crystal clear. No one's written your destiny for you. You write your own destiny. You just can't drop out of school and expect to magically drop into a good-paying job, right? You actually have to put in the time and train for it. But how do you actually go about writing that destiny? Well, the speech lays out some very specific daily commitments. It's not about trying to achieve perfection overnight. It's about the daily grind. We're talking about doing all your homework, actually paying attention in class, reading a book every single day, getting a bit uncomfortable, and stepping outside your bubble to join an extracurricular activity or volunteer, standing up to bullies so everyone has a safe place to learn, and, of course, just taking care of your own physical health. These are all small, entirely controllable actions that really start to compound over time.
Which takes us to Pillar 3, the myth of easy success.
Here, the speech sharply contrasts the kind of glamorous, effortless success constantly pushed by modern media. The idea that your one-way ticket to wealth is just becoming a rapper or a basketball star or blowing up on reality TV. It contrasts that illusion with the incredibly unglamorous reality of actual achievement. The argument is straightforward. Being successful is incredibly hard work. You aren't going to love every single subject. You definitely won't click with every teacher. And let's be honest, not every assignment is going to feel relevant in the moment. Real success is built on doing those difficult, boring things when absolutely nobody is watching.
Next up is Pillar 4, learning from your failures.
To sort of ground this abstract idea of overcoming failure, Obama points to a specific number that represents just an incredible level of resilience. The number is 12. J.K. Rowling, literally one of the most successful authors in human history, saw her very first Harry Potter manuscript get rejected 12 times before a publisher finally decided to take a chance on it. Think about that. 12 times she was told her work just wasn't good enough, and 12 times she absolutely refused to let that be the end of her story.
This whole point is perfectly summed up by a quote from Michael Jordan. As a lot of people know, Jordan was actually cut from his high school varsity basketball team. Over the course of his career, he lost hundreds of games and missed thousands upon thousands of shots. But he understood this really fundamental truth. You have to let your failures teach you, not define you. Failure isn't some permanent label slapped on your forehead. It's basically a diagnostic tool. It just shows you what you need to do a little bit differently the next time around.
The real crucial takeaway here is how we reframe failure in a school setting. If you get a bad grade on a test, it's so easy to internalize that, right? To just think, well, I guess I'm just not smart. But the address completely challenges that mindset. A bad grade absolutely does not mean you're stupid. It simply means you need to spend a little more time studying. I mean, just like you wouldn't expect to be a varsity athlete the very first time you pick up a basketball, you have to practice your schoolwork too.
And this all builds into a really practical framework for dealing with struggles. When you inevitably hit a wall, the speech recommends a few concrete steps. First, just admit you don't know the answer. Second, actually have the courage to ask for help. Third, go find a trusted adult, maybe a parent, a teacher, or a coach, and lean on them for support. And finally, use that support to really learn the new concept. The key here is that asking for help is framed not as a weakness, but as a tremendous sign of strength and courage.
And finally, we arrive at Pillar 5, your contribution to America. This is where the address connects the dots directly between, say, your boring Tuesday night math homework and the literal future of the entire country. Notice the mapping here. You're going to need the problem-solving skills you learn in science and math to go out and cure diseases or develop brand new energy technologies. You need the critical thinking skills you pick up in history and social studies to fight poverty, reduce crime, and end discrimination. The point is, the nation literally relies on students learning these subjects today so they can solve our most difficult problems tomorrow.
By placing the viewer on this sort of grand historical continuum, the speech totally shifts your perspective. You aren't just some kid sitting in a classroom. You are the next link in a very, very long chain. I mean, think about it. 250 years ago, young people who sat right where you sit waged a revolution and founded a nation. 75 years ago, students exactly like you overcame a massive depression, won a world war, and fought tirelessly for civil rights. And just 20 years ago, young students founded the massive tech companies that have completely revolutionized how the entire globe communicates. History is made by the students who just kept going.
So this all brings us to the driving thesis of the entire address. If you give up on yourself, you are giving up on your country. Quitting school, just zoning out in class, or refusing to put in the effort, it's framed here not just as an act of personal self-sabotage, but actually as an abandonment of your duty to your community and to the nation. The argument is that America desperately needs your specific talents, your specific intellect, just to keep moving forward.
We're going to conclude this explainer by leaving you with the exact same, really provocative question that Obama posed to students across the country that day, challenging you to really consider your own legacy. What is your contribution going to be? What problems are you going to solve? When history looks back at what you did with your education, what's it going to say? The teachers and the schools can provide the tools, sure, but at the end of the day, the effort, well, that has to come from you. So, what's it going to be?